Hi, everyone. My name is Erica. I am a 5-year travel occupational therapist and founder of The List. Today, we are talking about keeping your info safe while you're applying to jobs online. And today, we are joined by John Modica. He is the co-founder and VP of Experience for Kamana. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Erica. Excited for the conversation.
Thanks. That was a mouthful today. I did that a couple times. Awesome. Okay. So how did you and I meet? We met at TravCon in 2019, yeah?
Yeah, I think we definitely met at TravCon in 2019. I think we had some commonalities that we were both traveling healthcare professionals and excited about innovation in this space that is ripe for innovation. A lot of kind of archaic workflows and just ways of doing things for healthcare professionals. So I think we both kind of nerded out a little too long about different ways that we can kind of streamline ways we find jobs and connect with employers and navigate this complex world of travel healthcare.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a good conversation. I remember meeting you guys. I met your whole team and just being like, thank you. Thank you for saying what I'm saying. Like, this is mind blowing, right? Because we were having this conversation about how there was just such little tech in travel healthcare. It's this multi-billion-dollar industry, and there was just no tech supporting it. We were still finding our jobs through memes on Facebook. And I was like, why is it so hard to just move forward and keep up with tech? And it was like this crazy conversation, a meeting of the minds where I was like, oh, thank God for these people. They understand what I'm saying. It was
100%. Yeah.
It was interesting yesterday on our last meeting, you had said that there was some part of your app that some part of your product that you had made by request of me. I think it was the traveler's ability to share their own links, to share their own profiles to whoever they wanted to see it. Is that right? Did I track that correctly?
Yeah, for sure. So initially, the first kind of version of the sharing functionality is that you could email this unique link to, could be to a recruiter, somebody up in employee health, like whoever needs access temporarily to your credentials. But you and I talked about ways like, hey, instead of emailing it, can I just generate that link so that I can share it through other means? Maybe it's text message, or maybe it's pasting it in, a application process or something like that. So yeah, kind of talking through some of that brought some additional functionality to that feature.
Mm-hmm. And so coming full circle on that, that was I felt like that was really cool. I felt like that was a compliment to me, like, oh, cool. We're building this better functionality for our user base together. And so coming full circle to that, actually, when I met you guys at TravCon that year, this conversation actually helped inspire The List. I don't know if I would have. So after this conversation, I was like, you're right. I'm done with this. And I had done, I have a background in tech and automations for business solutions and stuff. And, after having this conversation, I remember I was speaking and I'd just gotten off stage and we were talking about this. We're like, why is tech so behind? And after our conversation, I was like, screw it, I'm just going to do it. And I went around to every single booth, every single agency. And I said, if I build this, will you use it? And they all said yes. And so that's how The List started that day. So actually, my whole company is a little bit inspired by our conversation that day. So I thought that
Nice.
was a cool.
You're like, if these guys can start a tech company, I can definitely start a tech company.
To be fair, this is my second tech company. And also I just needed a job board. I just personally needed there to be a job board where I could see all of the jobs available to me and be able to apply to them without waiting for someone to hopefully post something applicable on Facebook. So
for sure. And I know, knowing you on the other side of that coin too, you're talking to different staffing agencies and their employers, would you use it? But you were also talking to healthcare professionals that were at that conference and just in your network and saying, hey, this is how I'm struggling as a traveling healthcare professional. How do you navigate these things? Are you finding good solutions? Does this sound like a solution that you would use that would work for you? And the answer was yes, from everybody. So the need was very clear, but I think you got there just by talking to other folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now we're doing it. I'm so glad we had this conversation. TravCon, honestly, every year TravCon is just a gold mine for like a
It
meeting of the
is
minds. And like, you know, we're kind of in a bubble in this industry, and especially if you're a travel healthcare provider or if you're now running a company in the space, like it's such a tiny niche. Like there's just so few people that understand what your lifestyle is like or like understand the problems and the things you're facing. So it's just so cool to show up to a space where there's just hundreds of you that have similar experiences that you can brainstorm with. I very much appreciate TravCon for that reason.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, getting on to the topic that we're here to talk about. So, John is an expert in this, being a co-founder of Kamana. Today, we're going to talk about how to keep your information safe when you're applying for jobs and also how to store it safely. So the first question that I have for you, John, is like starting just with storage of your data. What are the best ways to store your data? What are your options for storing that?
Yeah. So I think to like make it succinct as possible, you want to have your stuff centralized. You want to have it encrypted. And we'll talk about that in a second. You want to have control over it wherever you're storing it. And then you want to think about like tools or systems to keep your data up to date. So like our resumes are constantly evolving, especially in the travel healthcare space. We're constantly renewing licenses and certifications, titers and vaccine records. We're getting additional CEUs and certifications and whatnot. So keeping track of all of that stuff can be daunting. You almost feel like an office manager at the end of the day trying to keep track of all this stuff. You know, getting into Kamana, and it's really the catalyst to why my co-founders and I started this company, is I sucked at keeping track of my stuff and storing my stuff as a traveling nurse. And so the way not to do it is to have your stuff scattered, right? So I had paper files in a paper folder that if somebody needed, I would have to snap pictures of and send to them. So now I've got photos on my phone. I've got PDFs in an email somewhere. I've got documents saved on my computer. So when your data is scattered everywhere, that's how you start to lose track of that titer. So you've got to get another one pulled, or you're losing track of who you're sharing your information with. And now you've got copies of this sensitive information kind of scattered all over the place. And it's also not effective, right? If you're going to quickly get that job and you want to beat other healthcare professionals to being the top of the list, you want to be able to efficiently and quickly share this data with whoever may need it. And we'll talk about sharing it, but you know, obviously I'm biased to Kamana, but you know, we created Kamana because healthcare professionals need that, you know, centralized, secure, efficient way to store this stuff. So Kamana encrypts all of your data. When you upload, you create that Kamana profile. You know, it's up to you what you put in there, but a lot of folks use this to keep track of those medical history items, licenses, certifications. All of that data remains encrypted in Kamana. It's completely independent and in your control as a healthcare professional. So that means that nobody has access to this. There's different pathways that you can connect your Kamana profile with employers, whether they're in the Kamana ecosystem or like the feature that you brought up, Erica. You can generate a unique link and you can share that link with somebody. And that person could obviously be a recruiter. It could be through, you know, a permanent employer if you're going through that onboarding process. But it could be, we see healthcare professionals using it as they go back to school and they're using it for clinical rotations, or they use it to share information with HR or employee health. But long way of saying you want to keep this stuff in control of your data. And the cool thing about Kamana is you can unshare that access. So if I want to give Erica access to my profile, but she doesn't find me that job as a recruiter, I can turn that access off so she no longer has it. And also, as you're updating your Kamana profile, it becomes that singular source of truth too. So if I update my BLS here, whoever has access to it gets that new version versus me having to share it 5 times. So obviously I'm biased to Kamana, but there's other tools out there too. So Dropbox, Google Drive, they use ways, or they have encryption too with the information that you put in there. There's unique ways that you can use both those tools to generate unique links and break those links if folks don't need access anymore. So there's some kind of scrappy ways that you can kind of piece some other pieces of tech together. There's a lot of things that are expiring. So Kamana will kick you reminders on when your stuff's expiring. But outside of that, if we see folks use Excel. I've seen folks use like reminders on their phone to try to keep track of those licenses and certifications and when things are expiring, because it's tough when you're on contract in California. Your employer is not going to remind you about your Alaska license expiring or your compact Florida license or something like that. So just think about ways that you can keep track of your expirations, and then just avoid tools that don't provide that security, and that encryption is kind of the key word there. So if you look at tools like, not to pick on folks, but there's a tool called Cam Scanner that I remember a lot of travelers were using when I first entered the space. It's a little app that you take a nice clean picture of your BLS card and you kind of create this file format. Cam Scanner got hacked, unfortunately, in 2019. And because they don't encrypt that data, those hackers just hit a gold mine of whatever files you uploaded there, they were able to grab. And then unfortunately too, when a lot of these other tools, when you go to share that data, it's just, kind of crunching it all up into a file and emailing it to that person. And we'll talk about why emails, no bueno when sharing this data. But keywords, make sure you're in control of your information. Make sure that things are encrypted, nice and secure, and think about tools to keep the stuff fresh and up to date so that you can get jobs quickly.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about our profile, let's go over like what we mean by our profile, because when you're applying to travel healthcare jobs, you're not just, there's a lot of information that has to be delivered before we could start at the hospital. So when we talk about our profile, the things that come to my head, that I personally keep in mind, your resume. And your resume will have to be updated each job that you take. Your CEUs, that is something that you're going to need to update consistently. Vaccinations, same thing. Every time you get a new vaccination, you want it in one place so that you have a record of everything that's done. Funny side story, I went on a medical mission trip to Africa. I think this one was to Uganda. And I had really quickly to go get my vaccinations. And I hadn't kept a record of everything I had been vaccinated for. And as a healthcare worker, it's like almost everything, right? And so since I didn't have that record, they had to just re-give me all of it. And it was like over $2,000 to get this done. And two, I have probably had, rubella 6 times. Yeah. I mean, like just getting re-injected for everything time and time again, because you're in a hurry. And if I had that accessible to me, if I knew right where it was, I could say, here's the date that I had it, here's where I had it, has it expired, and things like that. So other things, mileage, where you are in the world at what time. There's and by the way, several of these I have PDFs for on the list website. If you're on the landing page, scroll to the bottom and there's PDFs that you can download and use to track. I have for your vaccinations, for your mileage and travel tracking. And those you can put in a Google Drive file. You can upload them to Kamana. Mine are uploaded to my Kamana profile because that is what I use. But just finding one source to keep and hold all of these things. The travel tracking, I use that actually at Travel Tax just asked me for a record of this, because what I do when I travel is I'll have just a spreadsheet of dates, of all of the dates for 1 year. And I'll just put the city name of where I spent the night that night. And so if I spend 3 months here in Traverse City, Michigan, I will just drag that down. And then anytime I'm in a different city spending the night, I type in that new city and drag that down. And it is so incredibly time saving when you go to file your taxes, because you instantly know how many days you spent in your tax home, when you change cities, so you know when to look for flights and rental cars and mileage on your car. So that's something that I created for me. And like I said, Travel Tax just asked if they could have a copy to use for clients. And it's on the webpage. It's on the bottom of the listjobs.com. So you can download that too. And that'll just save you a ton of time on taxes. Other things, your references. Something that John and I were talking about yesterday, actually a tip I have on references is getting a reference letter written, and you can upload and have it dated and signed by that person. That way your references aren't getting called multiple times, and you can upload that. You can either keep it in your Google Drive, in your Dropbox, or upload it to Kamana. I have mine uploaded to Kamana. You will need a phone number or an email of that person in your profile for it to be complete. But that way, if it's an option, potential employers can just read the letter instead of like continually calling your references, which I know has been a fear of mine, just because it takes a few interviews or, in order to land that job. You're not necessarily going to take a job just because someone calls your references. You could choose something else. Other things that I keep in there, I keep a copy of my driver's license because you always need it. And I keep a voided blank check because they're always going to need that. And then your licensure also, how hard is it to remember like when your licensure is going to expire? I think at most I've had 7 licenses. And so the cool thing about Kamana, so if you're going to use a Dropbox, you'll have, a copy of your license in there, or at least the state and the ID number. If you use Kamana, you can upload a photo of the license, but you can even just put in the number and your first and last name and the expiration date, and you'll get notifications at 90, 60, and then 30 days that you need to update your license. And that has saved my butt so many times. So when we're talking about your profile, it's everything you can think of that you need to track and that you're going to need to submit in order to apply for or start a position in travel healthcare. John, what did I miss in that list? That was off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, you hit on, there's so much, it's daunting, but resume, CEUs, medical history, references, licenses, HR docs, and, like you called out, like some of this stuff can be just license numbers or reference contact information. And then other times you may have files that you want to associate with it too. A slick thing about Kamana is like, put all of your stuff here, centralize it here. And then when you go to share, you've actually got parameters around what you can share. So like, I'm the same way. I don't want to give you my references until I know that like we're close to landing this contract or it's appropriate, because you're going to wear those references out after they get a couple phone calls. They're going to say, I love you, Erica, but I can't keep talking to recruiters for you. So you can kind of turn on access to different pieces of the profile. But outside of that, you'll see hospitals or staffing agencies want to see diplomas, even transcripts sometimes. Skills checklists are a big pain in the butt. Mm-hmm. So once you do a skills checklist, like you can do them in Kamana, you can do them, you'll see Prophecy, you'll see different tools out there that you can do these skills checklists. Grab a copy of that skills checklist and put it into your profile. So next time somebody asks, you can say, hey, look, I've already done this. Please don't make me do it again. They take forever.
They take forever.
They do.
How many do you have to do? Lord.
I know. They're terrible. Same with competency tests. As you take those health stream or whatever competency tests, try to get those results and store them there. And I've even seen travelers ask and staffing agencies provide things like drug tests and background checks that they're running and saying, hey, this is your data. Here you go. Use it with the next employer. That's fine. So anything and everything, get it all stored in there wherever. That way you don't have to repeat this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Physicals too. When you said drug tests,
yeah. Also
your physicals. And my recommendation on physicals, because each agency is going to want you to go get a physical on their piece of paper, right? But what instead is you can ask what each of the agencies need. Like if you're, if you're going to potentially work for these 3 agencies, take all of the forms and go get one physical and have them sign each of those. Or if that's not possible and you're really planning ahead, just get a blank it can't have one agency's logo on it, or another agency won't accept it. So if you get a generic blank one, a lot of times that can work also. But I've definitely gone in with a few agencies that I could potentially work for in the future, just in case, and just did them all at the same time, because it's the same information. So going in 3 times for that is absurd. And then obviously keeping it in your file so that you have access to it. Anything that the agencies need, if they ask one time, I just put it in the file and then know that I have to keep it updated, because another agency is going to potentially want it. And then it's all in one place when you're like in a hurry and need to get this done. It is like doing your taxes. Applying to a travel job is like doing your taxes each time.
But you're filing with like 5 different versions of the IRS, and then you're doing it, 13 weeks later. It's wild.
It is exactly like that. 5 versions of the IRS. That's funny. Okay. Well, so I think that's a good grasp on everything that goes in your profile and the places that you have, the options you have in terms of storing your profile. And just to be clear, I don't think that we've mentioned this. The list and Kamana are partners. And so when you use the list, you automatically have a free profile on Kamana, and we will go in and pull that profile and stick it to your profile on the list. And what that means is, anytime, just to be clear on this, we never sell your data. We never give away your data. Your data is your data. We're never going to give your information, anything about you, to the agencies at the list. When you use the list, you choose your own job, and then you choose your own recruiter based on star ratings and reviews. And then you can click connect with that recruiter if you want to. And if you click connect with them, then you get their contact information. So their email, their phone number, their name, and you can get a hold of them right then. And they also get your contact information. And that includes your universal profile link through Kamana. So you choose if you want to apply to that job and talk to that recruiter. And if you click connect, then those things are instantly shared. So you don't have to go into Kamana and find it. It's there in your profile. So if you want to share that, if you want to apply to a job really quickly, that's the best way to do it, is you click connect, and then all of your information is there. Fun story. I was able to staff myself. So usually it takes about 3 weeks from the time a healthcare provider applies to a job or connects with the recruiter to when they can walk into the facility. There's just a ton of paperwork to do, interviews, all of these things. And I was able to staff myself and go from clicking contact on the list to walking into the facility in 5 days. And that was across the country. So the reason I got to do that is because I had my Kamana profile filled out. And so when I clicked connect with the recruiter, they called me and she was like, Erica, are you really applying for this job? Or are you just testing your system? Like, no, can you submit me? And she submitted me right then, because she had everything she needed in my Kamana profile. And I got a call 45 minutes later from the hiring manager at the facility. We interviewed for probably 45 minutes. And then 2 hours later, I had an offer and a contract in my email. And I started driving to California the next morning. So this industry is rolling very quickly right now, and getting your information in right away is the best way to secure that job.
I love it. Yeah. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be this, 3-week onboarding process that we have to do over and over and over again. So I love that you had that experience. And yeah, for folks that already have a Kamana profile, when you go to the list and look for jobs, you don't have to repeat that process. You're able to use your profile with the list, connect with those staffing agencies. And if you connect with staffing agencies out in the wild, lots of them are on Kamana. We're at around 170 different healthcare staffing agencies, and Kamana has a reverse side of the product that we sell to healthcare employers, is where we generate our income too, which allows us to keep the traveler wallet free, which is important. But when you connect with those employers, you don't even have to share your profile with them. You can just apply, accept that you want to connect your profile with their account, and you're not having to repeat that process. So as the ecosystem kind of grows in that sense, and we continue to get partners like the list, it's going to be really exciting to see more healthcare professionals have the experience that you had, Erica, and also hospitals too. Like they need you yesterday. They don't need you 4 weeks from now. So the faster that we can get to the bedside, the better patient outcomes are, and the better for those facilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So that's why having it done ahead of time, I cannot stress that enough. That's why anytime you connect, anytime you're applying to a job on the list, I send you an email. I'm like, hey, reminder, here's your profile link. Go in and make sure it's updated, because it's going to ultimately save you time. If you don't do it one time through Kamana or keep it updated in your Google Drive, wherever, you're going to have to redo it every single time. Like, just make your life easier and keep it updated so that you're ready to go and you can be the first one applying to that job. On that note, jobs turn over at a crazy high rate. Jobs will turn over 40 to 50% will close within 24 hours. It's insane. When you look at the jobs on our live stream, day by day, you will get a whole new fresh set of jobs. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that all, 40% of those have been filled and 40% new open up, but it does mean that they close because they've changed their mind or they realize that it is filled, or whatever the reason is. Jobs turn over at that very, very quick rate. And that being the case, you need to apply as soon as you see it. And you need to have everything ready as soon as you see it so that you can be the one that gets submitted if you're interested in that job. Especially, Jen, do you want to update us on the market with nursing? So very interestingly, it's funny because allied and nursing exist in like these bubbles. Like, certain people cannot, like, nurse, to them travel healthcare is nursing and they just see this. And then to allied, travel healthcare is just allied. It's OT, PT, SLP, imaging. And so I'll get these emails that'll say like I got one last night. It was like, yeah, there's like all of the nursing shortages and now like pay packages are dropping like crazy. And then I'll have a PT email me, or they'll post on Facebook. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm not taking anything less than $3,000 anymore. And it's like two different worlds that are happening. And it's funny because they both seem to like feel like they exist in a void, but it's very different all the time. Like, you'll have spikes in different disciplines all the time. And so, I can speak for therapy as a therapist. I can tell you that, therapy jobs are really good right now. They're paying well. There's still a high demand for therapy. And so, that's something to be aware of in those changes. And then John, I feel like you could speak more to nursing right now, which is, and John, by the way, was a travel nurse. So that is both of us, how we got into doing this was trying to solve problems in our own field. So what's the nursing temperature right now?
Yeah, I mean, like you called out, there's volatility right now in the market, and that's like, it's not because we're necessarily coming out of this pandemic either. Like, that's always in travel healthcare. You see ebbs and flows and these demands. And to your point, Erica, it's not always going to be the exact same picture for the physical therapist as it is for the ICU RN. You'll see demand fluctuate for both of these based off staffing situations, based off strikes, based off increase in patient census, whether unpredictable, like something like COVID, or predictable, something like flu season and snowbirds coming to Florida, things like that. So the current state is obviously temporary and hard to predict how it'll change. But for nursing right now, you are seeing it tighten a little bit on the job market side. So I would say what that means is that there's probably less jobs. You're not going to be as successful in being hyper picky about what state or city you want to go to, or maybe you're going to have to do a little bit more searching to find a facility and what agency is staffing for that facility to get into a very specific location. And you are seeing bill rates come down, and what bill rates are, these are what the hospitals are paying healthcare staffing companies to go find them that RN. So you're seeing some of those come down. So to Erica's point, like, getting buttoned up with your professional portfolio means that when you do find that position, and like Erica, when you say 40, 50% are closing in 24 hours, those are the great ones. The lousy ones are the ones that are sitting open for 2 weeks. So if you want to put your name in the hat, you want to get to the top of the list, you want to have a real buttoned up profile so that recruiter can say, oh, wow, I've got everything I need to submit them to this client, to this hospital. And then the hospital just sees how kind of squared away you are on getting that stuff. I mean, it's just setting you up for success with landing those contracts. So whether there's lots of jobs or a little bit of jobs, if you want the best job and you want to be picky about where you're going, getting your stuff together upfront, I think, is important in any market, but especially right now where there's not as much of a demand as we were seeing six months ago, probably.
Mm-hmm. That is a very good point about the good ones are the ones that are closing. So you need to be ready to apply and accept that day when you see it. And you can't if you have to take a few days to go and find all of these things.
For sure. Yeah.
So the next question that I have for you, and you definitely can speak to this, as you've been in the industry a long time and you also see both sides of it and are aware of a lot of things that maybe most of us travelers aren't aware of. When you're sharing your information, so we know that we have these profiles, we either have a Google Drive, we have a Dropbox, we're using Kamana, and we go to share this information, or even to go sign up for a new, whatever it is, to try to connect to new jobs. What things do we need to be careful of when we're sharing any of our information, even if it's just our name and email? What things have you seen in the industry that are happening?
Mm-hmm. So I'll speak to sharing first. So what I tell healthcare professionals is treat your data like you do your patient's data. Put that HIPAA hat on. If I was working at hospital A and Erica was at hospital B, and she was like, "Hey, John, just email, put all your stuff, put all that patient's data in your Gmail and send it over to my Yahoo." I'd be like, "No way, we're both going to lose our license if I do that." You would share this stuff in an encrypted format. So don't email your stuff, to put it plainly. Personal story. So I applied with a travel nursing staffing agency that I won't name. And I applied, I started the onboarding process. The job ended up closing. I moved on. About 18 months later, I got a letter from their CEO, me and probably, I don't know, thousands of other healthcare professionals saying, "Hey, sorry, but our email got hacked." And because our email got hacked, everybody that had emailed us files and information was just sitting there because the recruiters didn't delete it or remove it out. And your data got compromised. And we don't know what these folks are going to do with it, but we have to let you know, here's a year of identity theft monitoring or something like that. Like it was such a bummer. And I was like frustrated. I'm like, can't believe people are hacking healthcare professional data. Can't believe the staffing agency was so sloppy with storing this sensitive information and not deleting it when they no longer need it. But ultimately, I know better because I would never do that with patient data. Like we're all trained on HIPAA. We're trained on the importance of sharing only what's needed when it's needed and sharing it securely. So to put it simply, like, don't email your stuff. Don't email your sensitive data because it's at risk for being compromised in that transit when you're emailing from one email provider to another. That's why this secure link is an ideal way to go, or uploading that information directly into their secure HR system. And, remembering too, that when you email something to somebody, unless they are deleting that sensitive data, it's just sitting in their email forever. So it just takes somebody clicking a phishing email or something like that. And now these hackers have access to literally a gold mine. And unfortunately, hackers recognize healthcare staffing companies as gold mines because they're just so, they've got armies of recruiters that are just collecting data. And in the healthcare world, it's sensitive data because we need medical history items. We need, HR data, social security cards, stuff like that. So it's very valuable on the black market, if you will. So don't email your stuff. Don't text message your stuff. Same security issues with that. We talked about control. Try to share it in a way where you can unshare it when they no longer need access, or reach out and say, "Hey, I didn't end up taking that contract with you. Please delete my data. Please delete it out of your HR system. Please make sure it's removed from your email. If you did it that way, you have the right to ask for that." And more states like California are standing up laws to protect folks that do have those requests. So
that's super interesting. I didn't even know that. I mean, I didn't even think of it about your ability to call the agency and say,
Oh, for
please
sure.
remove all of my data. That is something
And
that I have never discussed in this field. So I don't feel like it's well known or thought about it, even if we know in the recesses of our
yeah,
head that we can do that with telemarketers. Of course, we could do it with the agencies.
for sure. And I think that goes to like the second piece of like signing up you mentioned, right? So this is tough when you're first entering the healthcare staffing space. I think a lot of folks learn it the hard way. I know I learned it the hard way because you just kind of Google, for me, travel nurse jobs, and I get these kind of results, and it's pitched as like, hey, we're a one-stop shop, put your information here and we connect you with just the best travel nursing opportunities. And the naive kind of green healthcare professional entering this space doesn't realize how many of these staffing agencies there are. There's literally thousands. So what these companies often do, they'll call themselves job boards or whatever, marketplaces, but the other side of the industry, the employers call them lead generators, which is it kind of just calls out exactly what it is. So I mean, to tell the story, Erica, the OT, like you're Googling for work, you find red hot, travel jobs or whatever it's called. And that's not an actual company, redhottraveljobs.com, right? Where you can apply once and connect with just the hottest OT jobs. So you put in your name, your phone number, your email, you click submit. And what they do is they get this hot lead. This is an occupational therapist that is hot looking for a job right now, and they start selling it to staffing agencies. That's a great client for them. So they could sell this lead for like $10, or they could sell it for pennies. It really depends. And that's where these staffing agencies go to get a lot of leads, and they'll pay for tens of thousands of them and just get huge Excel files. And they're never going to lose that information, right? They're going to just call you forever. And these lead generators aren't just selling it to one staffing agency. They're going to sell it to as many of them as they can. And then they'll even start selling it. Some of the really gross ones will start selling it just to whoever wants to buy contact information, telemarketers, whoever. So if you've already done that, I'll talk about like how you can kind of pull some of this stuff back in. But first of all, just don't do it, right? So when you interact with a company, like Erica just called out the list, never sells your data. So you should be asking that question to yourself, asking the representatives of that company, digging into their terms of service, their privacy policy. I know that stuff makes you want to throw up when you read it, but think about, what is this company that I'm about to put my information into? Because once you click submit, it's gone forever. It's out in the ethers. It's very hard to wrangle it back in. So pay attention to who you're applying with, and it goes for the agencies too. Pay attention to reviews and things like that. And if you do end up connecting with somebody that you feel like you shouldn't have, tell them, hey, I want you to delete my data. I don't want you to have access to it. And when you get that kind of cold call from a recruiter that you never applied with, it's probably because they got your information from one of these kind of icky sources. But ask them too. Say, hey, I don't remember applying with you. Can you tell me how you got my contact information? And would you mind deleting me out of your system? I'm not looking to work with you. If I do in the future, I can always make that connection, and try to chase down where they got it from if you can, and find that source and try to kind of stop that bleeding. But it can be very difficult. So just be super cautious of who you're sharing your stuff with. Ask why they need your information. Don't sign up for communication lists or newsletters or things with companies you're not familiar with. Ask folks where they got your information. Sign up on it's donotcall.gov. Go to that website, put your stuff in there. And I don't know how powerful that government website is, but it's a way to, I guess, socialize your information to kind of restrict these companies from continuing to use it. So that's a lot at once, but it's kind of like preventative is the best way here in avoiding these things, and just paying very close attention to what you're interacting with, and protect that data, because once it's out there, they have a hard time losing your phone number.
Mm-hmm. I have a hard time losing your phone number.
They do.
That's a good way to put it. Something else I want to touch on is, even if you're like, oh, I'm not applying to redhotjobs.com, I can see through that. I can see that I'm just giving them my information. even if it appears that you're applying to a specific job, even if it's a company you've heard of, even if you see this specific job and you're like, no, I'm applying to this job, chances are you're not really. You have to understand that like we said before, the speed at which the jobs open and close. So job boards, especially job boards that aren't meant to handle data at these speeds, if your systems aren't connected, then most of the time that job isn't going to be a real job. Like, so for example, Indeed is a fantastic job board, and I use them often, but for travel jobs, it takes a long time to fill in all of that information. And like I said, 40 to 50% of those travel jobs close every 24 hours. So the chance that that job is still open when you find it on a job board that's made for permanent jobs that don't close so fast, there is a high likelihood that that job is not open. And there is a high likelihood that if it was a really good job and it did pay really well, and then there's not as much incentive for the agency to close that job because it's still bringing in applicants, and they can say, oh, but we have this other job for you. And that happens not just on permanent job boards. That happens on that can happen on any job board. I mean, even on the list, there is a chance that you're going to apply and they're going to say, sorry, we have an applicant in, and then the next day you find out that that closed. That is just the speed of the industry. But we do update our jobs every 24 hours, every day. Our jobs get updated. But there is a chance that even if you're applying to a job in the travel healthcare industry, that job wasn't really open, that was sort of a bait and click situation to get your information. And it is very likely, job boards in any field, that they are taking your information and they are selling it to agencies in order for them to start calling you, texting you, emailing you, even if you think you just applied to this place that you've heard of for a specific job. Most of the time your information is being sold. Again, the list, one of the reasons I created the list is because we don't do that. We never sell your data. You will never get text, email, call from an agency on our board, because we don't give it away. Only you can give it away when you click connect. So that's just something to be careful of, just because you're not just giving your information out willy-nilly. If you feel like you're being careful and it was just for that job, very likely your information is still being sold if you put it into their database.
Yeah, no, I that's exactly what the list is providing, that the market needs. Like, I need to be able to apply to one job. I want one job. I don't want to apply to 500 different jobs and different employers. So that very intentional process with the list of like, this is the job, this is the recruiter, this is a staffing agency, please just one, right? Or maybe I want to apply with this one as well over here. So it's controlled. Like we talked about control earlier. It's a way to control who you're connecting with, which is so important. And like, great point too, the shelf life of these jobs is so short that, like, Indeed, as powerful as it is, there's a lot of stale jobs on there, and there's a lot of like unmotivation, or there's not a lot of motivation for an employer to take down a really great job that's getting applicants, because to your point, those are applicants they can call and pitch other jobs. So I think what really sold me, what I love about the list, I should say, because what sold me on the concept when you first talked to me, and what I love about what you've done with it is, like, yes, you get jobs up there very quickly. Yes, they're, coming direct from these agencies, often right from the source. So it's like, very quickly you're seeing these jobs, but very quickly these jobs are coming down. They're getting pulled down. So keeping that job data fresh is very challenging with how short the shelf life is of these jobs, but you're doing a great job of that. And that allows me as a nurse to go there and say, hey, what are the real-time jobs right now? I like this one. I want to apply with only this one. So I've got control. I've got an accurate view of my options, and I'm not wasting time shotgun blasting my data all over, God's green earth, or applying to a bunch of jobs that aren't even open and then getting pitched jobs in like a totally different state. So challenging problems to solve, but you guys are doing it at the list. I think it's so needed.
Thank you. Thank you. It is a challenge. It has definitely been a tough road to be able to do this and try to fix problems that are, industry wide. There are challenges that we have industry wide, especially with keeping the data accurate, because there's so much data and it comes through so quickly. So, across the industry, we're all trying really hard to keep these jobs up to date and label them correctly, and just trying to do whatever we can with the technology to make this system easier and faster for all parties involved. Yeah. All right. Well, John, I don't know how long we recorded. It's probably a longer video, but it was such great content. I love talking to you. Every time you and I get into a conversation, we just talk about like the best things and the things that are like on both of our minds. So I super appreciate you doing this video with me. Thank you for coming. And for anyone that wants to use the Kamana profile, you can go to kamana.com. You can also come through the list. If you create a profile here, you will automatically get a profile at Kamana, or vice versa. You can go to Kamana and connect it to us, or whoever you would like to connect it with. You have that as your digital wallet with all of your things, and you can share it wherever you would like. So anyway, any last thoughts, John?
No, I think like you called out at the top, we're feedback driven. Like I love talking to you and getting ideas from you and hearing pain points. So yeah, anybody out there that maybe you already have a Kamana profile and you've got some feedback for us or thoughts or ideas, or maybe you're thinking about signing up but have some questions, like just reach out, ask us. Like this is what we're here for, and we want to hear what we can be doing better, and we want to hear what pain points we're having out there. But no, I appreciate the conversation, Erica. Keep up the good fight, and excited for the next one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Have a great day, and everybody watching, have a great day as well.